Bold, robust, delicious. It's coffee that can wake the dead. With over a dozen different roasts and flavors, Deadly Grounds can satisfy the most finicky of coffee addicts. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
Persons under 18 will not be admitted.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to another kick-ass episode of Wow! Oh, all messed up already. All messed up.
We're only halfway through the week.
Still Toking With. Another episode of Still Toking With. I blame it on the guest. I'm going to blame it on the guest because, you know, we've interviewed a ton of people over 6 seasons here. But this gentleman is just like, wow. That's all I can say is wow, because I'm not allowed to introduce him. But I can introduce the man that brings the flash with Flashy, Mr. Jeffrey Mark.
I wasn't going to blame it on the Bossa Nova, but I like your version better. Hi. Well, yeah, I'm very excited. Anytime I get to work with a good buddy, it's an awful lot of fun. And folks, friends and fans, you're going to have such a good time today. I'm promising you. Isn't that right, Jeff?
Absolutely. First, I'm going to apologize because I've been informed that I need to get wired. So if I seem a little choppy, it's because I need to plug in. Apparently, I'm too far from Wi-Fi. I think that's what happened to me years ago too. I think that's part of my problem. I got to plug in more often. So that being said, I'm looking forward to chatting with this fine gentleman. I've seen him, I've heard him. I remember some of it. I don't remember a lot of it. But that voice, holy Toledo. Everybody's going to know this voice. Let's bring him in, Mr. Randy West.
Hey. How you doing, Jeff? Good to see you guys.
Hey.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I haven't been toking as much as you have, but we'll toke together.
Right. So
that's good. I'm glad I'm holding off until after the show because that shirt would really fuck me up.
Yes, it's made with mushrooms, man. Dude.
So, I mean, I wasn't joking, folks, when I said this gentleman has done literally everything from radio to TV to stage to, you name it. But my first question, I want to bring this right up right away.
Yep.
Is how did somebody with such an amazing resume start working for the DMV as a traffic school instructor?
Hey, you got to do what you got to do when you need to do it. Between gigs early on, I mean, there was a place to get an audience. You got 40 people in a room and they can't walk out because you're holding their driver's license. So there's an audience that can't walk out and won't heckle you. So there's no better room to be working.
All right. Okay.
No wonder there's so many crashes in LA.
Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
Did you actually?
It is.
Did you actually use material? Like, did you do comedy in front of these people?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah. Please explain that. He wasn't just there as a civil service employee. It's
hell
comedy.
no.
It's comedy traffic school.
That was the name of the school, Comedy Traffic School. And it was wonderful because we got to, dish and dirt on the way people drive. Go around the room. What was your offense? Following too closely. But I remember a court case in San Francisco where a sodomy charge was reduced to following too closely. But yes, and another 8 hours of that, and you had to sit there for it.
You can see why we are very close friends.
I can see it. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but
following way too close.
I had to bring that up for multiple reasons, of course. One, because you've done so many things, but I saw that on the resume and I was like, wow. But my father-in-law, who has passed away, was also a driving instructor.
Oh,
so we used to hear some pretty wild stories.
Oh my God, yes. It's unbelievable that people get behind the wheels. You talk to 40 people for 8 hours and hear their ideas of what it is to be driving and how they prepare to sit behind. I mean, it's unbelievable what people do. So it's surprising any of us ever get home once you're on the roads.
True. And Jeff and I are both from Massachusetts, and you know what they say about us.
You're a masshole.
That's right. So
right. So
can
you drive a stick?
Jeff has an accent there that you got a regional thing going on. Sounds very Boston. Was that what it was?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Very good. Well, if you're from Massachusetts, I'll speak slowly. Don't worry about it.
Randy, we have a fan watching named Joanna.
Yep.
She you know what?
Give
her a come on down. I think it would thrill her.
Joanna, come on down. You're the next contestant on Toking With a New Car.
You are one of the very few humans who actually got to say that with Bob Barker.
The show was on the air for 52 years. I'm one of a handful of guys who indeed got a chance to, answer when Bob said, "What kind of car is that, Randy?" And I would say, "Bob, it's a new car. We don't give away used cars, you idiot." No, I never did. Your showcase begins with a fabulous trip to nowhere. You'll spend 5 days and 2 lonely nights roaming the beaches alone on your fabulous trip to wherever. Working the Price is Right. I mean, that's a piece of Americana, and I was very honored. And a chance to do that with Barker. Barker started doing television before there was videotape. So he does a show and it comes out to be 58 minutes and 32 seconds or whatever the prescribed, time is, without editing, without second guessing. It's just made it all so simple. You could just watch him gain a few seconds here, stretch a few seconds there, and damned if he didn't bring it in within a 10-second margin each and every day. It was phenomenal to work with a pro of that nature. Fantastic.
I mean, I loved watching the show, believe it or not. I actually did enjoy watching The Price is Right.
Well,
I never watched too many game shows, but The Price is Right was one of the ones that I did.
Today is the 10,000th episode of The Price is Right on CBS. Today is the air date for it.
Wow.
And that's a lot of episodes, and that's 52 years. It's quite amazing.
And there's 10 years of Bill Cullen hosting it before that even.
Way before that, before the 1972 incarnation of CBS with Bob Barker, Bill Cullen hosted it on NBC and then ABC. Exactly.
So
And Randy, who was the announcer for Bill Cullen on NBC? Randy?
Don Pardo speaking. This is NBC, the National Bird Chasing Network. Don Pardo. Don Pardo, you'll love this story. Don was a friend. He was doing the show for NBC where he had an ongoing contract, and Mark Goodson pulled the show from NBC and brought it to ABC. And he went to Don Pardo in 1956 or 7. I may be off a year here, and said to Don Pardo, the show is such a hit, you do such a great job, I will double your salary if you leave NBC to come with the show to ABC. Don at the time, this is the 1950s, was making $50,000 a year, which today would be like, $250,000 plus. I don't know the exact numbers. So the deal was, I'll give you $500,000 by today's dollars to come to ABC. Don went home and told his wife, I'm getting double my salary, but I'm not going to take it. She almost left him because they argued every night, take the money. And he said, no, because the show will be gone in a year, 2, 3, and I'll be out on the street looking for work. I could work at NBC for the rest of my life. And he did.
And he was right. Because
he was right.
The show in 1963 moved to ABC and a couple of seasons, and it was gone. And Don became the local WNBC announcer for all of their stuff. And then when Saturday Night Live came along, there was Don for how many? For almost 40 seasons.
Yes.
Wow.
Beyond The Price is Right. Don worked every week.
And it made him a star because he gets some on-camera time there, and everyone knew Don Pardo speaking.
And it was a thrill to be on Live at 5 and have Don be the announcer. He didn't announce my name. He just announced, the show came back from commercial, but just to be in his presence was amazing.
Fantastic. Well, just so folks know, Don was under contract with NBC, which meant he sat in the announcer's lounge. Just stand by. He sat here at NBC. This is the sign from, yes. So he sat here until they needed him somewhere. And that could be recording a commercial, doing a show, whatever. So he's under contract in the building. So the local WNBC TV newscast, Live at 5, said, hey, he's in the room. Why don't we just have him announce the show? So coming back from every commercial on a local news program, you'd hear, back to Live at 5. He'd be standing there every 7 minutes doing an introduction. It was crazy. Bottom of the line, though, he stayed with NBC, had a deal for life. And of course, the highlight of it was meeting Jeffrey Mark at Live at 5. Now,
yeah, I'm sure that's what he took to his grave when he met me.
Now, that was a newscast. How did you get on a newscast? What was the felony that got you on a newscast?
Having a best-selling book.
Well, I think it could be a misdemeanor, but yes.
Yeah, when my first book came out, it did enormously well and led to a lot of things that are in my life now.
Which book was that?
The first book I wrote about Ella Fitzgerald, plugging for Black History Month, while we're still in it. Yes. And they were very nice to me at NBC. They had me on both the Today Show and on Live at 5 to promote the book and book signings I was doing in New York City.
Fantastic.
And I didn't even have a publicist back then. That just happened because the book did really, really well.
It's wonderful.
But it's the Randy Mark show.
That's why I'm just sitting here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, this is great. I love it.
Randy, tell the story of how you came to be the come on down guy, because it's a fascinating, all the connections you made through your life funneled you into one point. It's amazing to me. Please tell the story.
I went to CBS with a gun and I said, I'm going on the air. No. It's real easy. Anybody could do it. Yeah. No, when I was a kid, I used to cut glass. Listen, when you're watching TV as a kid, everybody on that screen behind the glass, they all seem happy. Singers, dancers, comedians, jugglers. I want to be in that world, not the one behind. I want to be in there. And I found out as a kid growing up in New York, you could just get on the subway and go down and watch TV shows tape. Yeah. So I went down there all the time and hung out with the announcer whose name was Johnny Olson, because Johnny was doing all those great game shows. What's My Line? Is to Tell the Truth, and on and on and on. And I must have sat there drooling because I just was fascinated by his audience warm up, the way he greeted the audience members and how he would read all this live copy without making a mistake. And I introduced myself and became friendly with him. I would go down, take the subway, and meet him. And Randy, you want to do this for a living? Get yourself into radio when you get out of school. That would be great. And here's some of my scripts. Go home and practice. So we brought a relationship together in the late 60s, early 70s. I was a kid. And then I got into radio, and he moved to Los Angeles in 1972 to announce The Price is Right from LA. And I was working in radio and came to LA in a radio gig in 1979, went down to CBS, and he remembered me from 7 years earlier, which was quite a surprise. But now it's two adults. I'm no longer a kid in high school and college. I'm halfway, in the business doing radio. He's doing television, but he recognized my sincerity, and we used to go to lunches, and he taught me everything there is to know about doing that job. The psychology of audience warm-up, why you welcome the members of the audience the way you do to bring out their introverted selves so they're making a loud reaction to the show, laughing, they're uninhibited. That's the idea of doing a warm-up. And he gave me the secret to reading live copy without making a mistake, and that is he would mark it with an intricate set of slashes and circles and dots and dashes and arrows, the way, let's say, Beethoven's writing music. How do you know when you sit down to play his sonata that you're playing it the way he heard it? Well, all those notes and all those dots and dashes in a musical composition tells you how to play it, and you come damn close to the way it was composed. Well, Johnny taught me how to do that with copy. So I have his old scripts, and I can read them for you the way he read them because he taught me the way he marks the copy. So long story short, I'm in LA. We're friends. He's teaching me the business. I break into the business. He dies in 85. I'm carrying on with what he taught me. 85, he's gone. In 1999, I get a phone call out of the blue. Are you the Randy West who corresponded with Johnny Olson? Well, the dude's dead for 14. Well, yeah. Well, we're Penny Olson's, his wife's, nephew. We're closing out the house. They had no kids. And there's material here. You apparently shared letters back in. Yes, he kept my letters. Well, yes, he did. And he also kept 58 years of mementos from a massive career that started in the 1930s. So microphones and Emmy Awards and scripts and personal effects and press clippings, they sent it to me for safekeeping. Now, I'm holding everything this man ever had because they felt I would give it a respectful home, which I have. And then, lo and behold, with the material he taught me, I'm working more and more game shows. And eventually I get an opportunity to audition for The Price is Right. They bring me down there to do a week of shows. And the first thing I did walk in on the first day is to wear his badge from when he was there. I'm there in 2003. He left he died in 85. So 15, 18 years after he's gone, I'm wearing his badge. And they're like, where on earth did you get that? And the story just comes together as if it was meant to be. This guy who I met as a kid, now I'm well into adulthood, and I'm standing where he stood in his footsteps, doing the job he was most famous for. It's crazy. It's the cosmic symmetry.
And doing it very well, by the way.
Well, Barker liked me, and I stayed, so that's good. I stayed with the company for 20 plus years doing other work for them. And the one thing that came in all those boxes of Johnny Olson material and his scripts and his savings and pictures of his childhood, every gosh darn thing he ever saved, was an autobiography he was writing about the television business. And never finished it, but there was an outline and a couple of chapters, and I had listened to his stories for decades, so I knew the kind of stories he told and his experiences. So I took his outline, the material that he wrote, and I took the rest of what I knew from him and put it in a book called Johnny Olson, A Voice in Time. And now I was not an author before this. I barely could write a letter home, but I spent a lot of time working on these 400 pages based on the material that he left and saved and told us about and told the world about. And it's a history of television from the very beginning, because he was there when it started, through the 20th century until today. Stories from behind the scenes of The Price is Right and all the shows he did and the people he worked with, Frank Sinatra. I mean, everybody at one time or another he crossed paths with, along with all the great executives, and the story of how ABC became ABC. It was a spinoff from NBC. It was the NBC Blue Network that became ABC. The fights between CBS and NBC, David Sarnoff and Bill Paley, all the politics, all the shows, all the celebrities, from a lifetime, his 58 year in the business, and my ability to add to the stories he was telling. So
And
I
Randy,
became an author.
Randy, where could
That's
someone
fantastic.
get that book if they'd like to purchase it?
You have to break into my home in the middle of the night to find where I hid them. Or you can go
Or-
to tvrandywest.com. tvrandywest, all one word, tvrandywest.com. I have
that
my
way-
own domain. I'm the master of my own domain.
He
Yes.
can
So-
autograph it for you and personalize it to you. And as
So,
long as we're holding
real
up
quick, I'm
Yes,
going to break in here real quick.
Please.
For everybody watching or listening later on the podcast, just check the show notes up above or down below. All that information that they just gave you is there. So Randy's website's there. A direct link to the Amazon is there. But we
Thank
prefer
you.
if you go to his website, because like Jeffrey Mark said, maybe he can autograph it for you.
And I'm selling it less expensive by about $10 than Amazon.
a bargain is a bargain with your name.
Yes,
Randy,
friends, let me tell you now, if you act now, you'll also
Wow.
receive. Yes. But wait, there's more.
Yeah, Steve Jordan's going to invade your home. He's just telling us. So be prepared.
He
for
said,
Steve
I'll be there at
Jordan to
3
show up.
a.m.
Yes.
I got a gun. I got a gun. Come
Yeah,
on.
I've heard
take
that
your best
about
shot.
you. So as long as we're doing Plugorama,
Yeah.
you have a more recent book. It's much larger than that.
Well, it's
Hey,
not about
hey,
size. It's not
It's-
about size. As
The
you know.
hell it isn't. And would you please show it to us?
Well, I've heard that in the men's
The
room,
book,
but
the
that's
book,
different.
yeah.
Oh, the book
Yeah,
you
the
meant.
book,
Okay.
yes.
Well, this is TV Inside Out. Now, let me tell you, I'm at a point now after 44 years in SAG and after on television for just about 50 years, I have seen, you will never believe what I've seen. And I've written it down because I don't care anymore. You know what I mean? I got nothing to lose. So I've worked with, start naming people. You know, I shared a studio with Johnny Carson. I worked with Jay Leno. I mean, I worked all the game shows, Bob Barker and Gene Rayburn and all these folks. And I've told their greatest, craziest stories. TV Inside Out, flukes, flakes, feuds, and felonies. I mean, that tells it right there. So what happened the night Jay Leno was arrested by the LAPD on Hollywood Boulevard? Jay Leno was on Hollywood Boulevard. He gets arrested by the LAPD for vagrancy. They thought he was dealing drugs. They rode him around in the back of the black and white unit all night long. He's doing comedy for them. It's a crazy story from his mouth. Jerry Lewis once threatened Joan Rivers' life. I mean, threatened her life. She went out and bought a gun. That's how threatened she felt.
Wow.
And,
So behind the scenes, you guys are pretty psycho.
I'm sorry.
He didn't
Behind
hear
the
you,
scenes,
Ben.
You guys are pretty psycho.
Yes. Behind the scenes, actors are psycho. Yes.
Oh, God, yeah. Well, this is where the psycho people meet. Let me tell you exactly why. It's real easy. You don't understand why the insanity in television is greater than the insanity anywhere else on the planet. And that's because people think they're successful if they make a lot of money and become famous, right? If I said to you, what would be a success? How would you make yourself a success? Well, I'd be rich and I'd be famous. Then my life will be wonderful, right? Well, what happens if you think fame and fortune will make your life wonderful, and then it doesn't? In fact, all it does is complicate your life, and your misery is even worse now because the fantasy that it'll all be better isn't true. Now you're really depressed, and now you start looking for another way to feel good. Alcohol, drugs, sex. That's when people go off the rails. So Red Fox, when he was doing Sanford and Son, ran around NBC with a gun in his pocket and pulled it on a couple of executives. And that was the end of the Sanford and Son show. When he pulled the gun on executive, we need him out of here. Done. Show is a hit. Canceled, though. Can't deal with that. And the story of Bill Cosby and his sexual exploits, known for 15 years before the public got into it. Everyone just denied it. Well, he's Bill Cosby. He's the great American father or whatever.
I can vouch for what Randy is saying. If you were in New York and you were anywhere around 30 Rock, meaning the people there knew who you were, the stories, because 30 Rock is Manhattan Rockefeller Center. Bill Cosby show was being shot in Brooklyn in the Color Studios there. Right. And the gossip about what was going on and how management was either completely ignoring it or didn't know, and gossip. So those of us who were there, we knew all these stories way before anybody else heard about them. So Randy is absolutely right.
15 years. It was craziness started before word got out.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, it seems like almost every year something new is coming out from actors, actresses, musicians, Hollywood, that the public is just learning about. But when you dig a little deeper, it was known 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
Randy has so many stories, and I'm forgive me, my buddy. Yeah. This book is huge and thick. And
500 pages. It's like the Manhattan
long pages like this. And he's got a part 2 he's working on. There are so many more stories yet that he can fill up another book like that with these stories. So let's hear it for Randy and his research and these books, because they're wonderful.
Well, I'll give you, Betty White and B. Arthur, 2 of the Golden Girls, 2 of them hated each other, could not get along. Well, Betty never hated anyone, let's put it that way. But B hated Betty. And they didn't speak between lines, and it's a cut. We'll get back in a moment, reposition cameras. The 2 of them never spoke. There was a real bad blood between them.
Yes, there was.
Yeah, it's Johnny Carson. Now, here's a story I traded on for 15 years, and now people are starting to talk about it. Johnny Carson had a granddaughter that he refused to acknowledge because she was biracial. So you have Johnny Carson's son, who was living off of Johnny. He was a golf pro. He was not making any money, but you didn't need to. The faucet was running pretty fast. He got all the money he needed, until one day Johnny found out that he's dating a black woman and said, you need to cut that off right now. Well, I can't, Dad. It's not that easy. We have a child together. You what? So in order for him to continue to be on the dole, so to speak, from Johnny, he had to leave the woman, disavow her, and disavow the child. He had to pay child support of $500 a month, which is like nothing, okay, until the kid reached 18, and then $0. And Johnny left, I think it's like $71 million or something in his estate. Not a penny went to this girl. And now if you go Google, she's now yelling and screaming about it because she wanted to, after Johnny died, have people know how she suffered. So here's a wealthy man with a biracial child. His white son was dating a black woman, and he has to write his son out entirely unless he gives up the wife and kid, and that's what he does. So Johnny was a happy man to watch on television, but a very difficult man behind the scenes. And him and Joan Rivers, that story's been told a million times. And then Joan turns around and says to me, oh, Johnny and I had a one-night stand. And I look at her and I said, really? Well, back when we were on great terms, I can't prove it or disprove it, but I'll tell you what she says about it in the book. All I can do is repeat it, and it's interesting enough.
So, folks, what we're trying to say is this is a book you got to have. And
I couldn't put it down. Couldn't put it down.
For something that has that many pages and that many types of stories, you'd think it would be super expensive, but I just went to his website, took a look. It's not.
No,
it's not that expensive.
Well, I'm not doing this for money. This is not my livelihood. This is a sideline. I like telling the stories. I love the business. I love the people. And I'm endlessly fascinated by these stories of the stars that we think we know when we see them on television. So it's not really it's not a profit thing.
For all of you out there who believe the stereotypes about Jewish people, here's a Jewish man who's not doing it for the money. So I don't want to hear any more stereotypes.
It's not about the money. I just love the business and love the stories because it's incredible. It's just incredible what goes on behind the scenes. And the more I see of it, the more fascinating it becomes to me. It's crazy. And Bob Barker, as much as I love working with him and always will remember, because he was very kind to me, we all know there was all sorts of hocus pocus and nonsense going on behind the scenes. There were models who were suing him. The director was fired and then filed suit for, wrongful termination. There was a lot going on behind that scene. And all I did was just keep my head above the water, stay the hell out of it, which is a lesson I had to learn the hard way. Because when people around you are fighting and arguing and there's stuff going on, it's hard to just turn away, take no side. Well, Randy, don't you think so? Hey, I don't really know what to think, and walk away. I'm not getting sucked in.
You're working on something now that we should be talking about. And I'm bringing it up so we have enough time to talk about it because it's a long story, or at least a long development. For baby boomers and maybe people above and below them by generation, a very famous phrase that we heard on television a lot was from Television City in Hollywood. And then the show would start whatever it was. The Carol Burnett show, All in the Family, Red Skelton, or even going back to the 50s, Shower of Stars or whatever.
Jack Benny, Danny Kaye.
So I will give a brief history so you can tell your stories.
Sure.
When West Coast broadcasting became a thing, because until they had a coaxial cable, I know, folks, before Wi-Fi and before satellite dishes and before everything we think was always there, it wasn't always there. And if you did a live show from the West Coast, they had to film the television screen and send that film to the East Coast because you couldn't broadcast across the country. Once you could, CBS bought what had been Gilmore Field, which is where the Hollywood All-Stars played baseball, and built this state-of-the-art Television City from Hollywood thing. And it became an icon in Hollywood. Even if you weren't on CBS, people rented space there because the studios were so good. And as recently as November, we had Randy's and my dear buddy Peter Marshall's memorial service on the same soundstage where they do Dancing with the Stars.
Right.
So it's still being used, but things are changing, and they're changing because of, where are you? That guy over there. Things are changing for the good because that guy got involved. So Randy West, tell us how you got involved, why you got involved, and what you're doing now, because I find it fascinating.
Well, it's, again, more of the passion. They built Television City in 1952. They broke ground before you could get a television show to the East Coast. As you said, you had to film the screen. And there was no videotape back in those days. 1% of American households had television in 1950. 1% of American households had television. So they turn around and they buy 25 acres of land and they build this monument to the future of television at a cost of $35 million, which today is $500 million. Banking on the future, a $500 million palace of television production, looking forward to the future. So it's been operational for 70 plus years. All in the Family, and I mean, thousands of Carol Burnett and The Price is Right and Match Game and Jack Benny and Danny Kaye and on and on and on. All the great shows you've loved your whole life. It came from Television City in Hollywood. And now CBS sells the property because they're getting out of the real estate business. They've sold a lot of their properties, including BlackRock, the big office building in New York. So a company buys it and decides they're going to redo the whole place because it's old and it could use some upgrading. And I find out that they're going to fool with the original 4 studios that were built in 1952, the original studios. And wait a minute, wasn't that given cultural landmark status? Yes. Well, wait a minute. How are they going to screw with that? How do you do that? It's a landmark. So I go down to say exactly what's going on here. And they show me the model of what their plans are. Well, we're going to take those 4 studios. We're going to break through the ceiling and add another floor to them. And then we're going to combine these 2. And then we're going to push out the wall. Wait a minute. You can't do all that. Well, our architect is working with the attorneys. And blah, blah, blah. I said, no, wait a minute. You can do whatever you want in your mind. But if you do that, I will bring 100 CBS retirees who worked this building over a 70-year period. I'll bring them down here. And who knows, maybe some news cameras will show up. You don't understand. This is the cultural tapestry of America. Start naming television shows. You have 25 acres. Go fool with the other 24. Leave these 4 studios alone. They have history that's recognized by the state of California. It's a landmark. So I got in their face and told them, you can't do that without repercussion. Well, they had other reasons to go back and change their plans, and they changed their plans to include what I was advocating for, which is to keep these 4 studios. Mm-hmm. I shot my screaming match and got in their face, and they got a phone call out of the blue. This is Brian at Hackman Properties. We had that great conversation about reservation. Would you like to come down? Please be our guest. Come visit. I'd like to tell you about our new plans. I go down there, and lo and behold, they're leaving the 4 studios alone. I fought hard and managed to save these 4 studios. And I said, that's 95% of what I wanted. He said, what's the other 5%? And I gave them, well, when you do this, don't do that. Done. Handshake. Now, will you do something for us, Randy? What can I do for you? Go down to City Hall with us and advocate for us to get the approval to do the other 24 acres. They want to, raise old buildings and do brand new construction, massive studios, very tall pixel screens. You no longer go on location anywhere. You put a picture of what it is behind you with these millions of tiny pixels. And the way the line of scrimmage on a football game moves when they move the camera. I don't know how they do that. It's like superimposed. But if you put actors in front of these pixels and they move and the cameras move, the background moves too to keep it all in sync. So you don't have to go anywhere anymore. It's quite amazing. So they're building these state-of-the-art studios. I went down to City Hall, fought for them in front of the Land Use Committee and the Planning and Zoning Committee, and this full city council finally gave their approval just a couple of weeks ago for them to proceed. So now I'm on the good list down there. And I'm working toward, before they break the walls down on the other buildings, I'm going to try to get what I can out of there that has historical significance. And it's going to go to the Strong Museum in Rochester, New York, which is building an archives for television. So nice. The sideline of this is, along the way, they say, we give tours of this place to people we'd like to have on our side as we do the reconstruction. And, we're real estate people, but Randy, you worked at this. When did you first work? About 42 years ago. My God, and you've worked here for on and off. Yes. And the shows. And yes. Would you please give the tours for us? We're real estate people, but the significance and the stories behind Press Your Luck and all these great game shows that we know, and the great sitcoms and the great variety shows. So now I give tours for them happily to do it because that place has that significance, and I'd like more people to know about it. So one of the game show hosts that I worked with said, "Hey, you're an idiot, Randy." I said, "Well, what the hell are you talking about? It's a book. Don't just tell the stories to the people who show up. That's a handful of people at a time. Write the book from Television City in Hollywood." So I'm halfway through it now. I go back to TV City next week, looking at the old plans, walking around. They're showing me where the changes were made and over the years and what shows were there and what equipment is still there. It's all fascinating to me. And the same game show host said, "Randy, I'm going to put you in touch with a documentary filmmaker, because if you can get access in there with a camera." I said, "Yeah, they love me. I go anywhere I want in there." "Well, it's a documentary, don't you think?" I said, "If the documentary filmmaker thinks it is, then I do too." So that's where we're at now. So I'm writing the book, which will be the guide to a documentary film about the one and only first television facility that was built from the ground up to be a television facility. if people went to television studios in the old days, they found they were converted radio studios. They were converted Broadway theaters. There was an ice skating rink that became a television place. There was a horse stable and riding room that became the first studio that ABC had on West 66th Street. It was a riding academy. So
if I may interrupt 1 second, Randy,
go ahead.
Just to add to your story, on the West Coast, the facilities were even worse.
Yes.
Because all you had were radio studios that they were trying to retrofit, and just a couple of old vaudeville theaters that they were doing the same sort of trick with.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing for live television
There's
or
a couple of
live
nightclubs.
to video.
There was a couple of nightclubs.
There were nightclubs.
Yeah.
So Lucy and Desi did the first filmed thing in front of an audience dedicated to that. But for the preponderance of early television, it was live or live to tape. There was nothing.
Nothing.
The NBC Burbank facility was years away from being built. This was it. This was the state-of-the-art television center. It's why it's so important to television history. And there is no one better to write the book, be the host, or make this film than my buddy Randy West.
Well, you know the story, Jeffrey. It's Television City because it is a city. First of all, the studios are not converted radio studios, which are tiny. They are large enough to stage dance numbers, and the things, the variety shows that we've seen. And most significantly, all these converted radio studios and theaters and nightclubs, none of them could you build sets. You had to have them built somewhere and trucked in. Television City is a city. You can build the sets. There's design, build the sets. You can cast a show there. There are rooms for that. You have writing and director conference rooms. You have everything you need to come in with an idea and to complete the entire process to get a show on the air without leaving the building. Special effects, metal shop, wood shops, everything you could need is in one building, especially building sets, which is a massive undertaking if you're trying to ship them around in a truck all around the town. Rehearsal halls, things that never existed in these old little, half-assed, if you will, reconstructed places that are trying to become television studios. So that's why TV City is so significant. It was way ahead of its time. It's the first television facility from soup to nuts, as they say, meaning everything you could possibly need under one roof. And it's always fascinated me to go to work there. And the people who are on crews there, the technicians, there's a great deal of pride. They do the best work in the industry. And they're all cooperating with me and telling their great stories. The Carol Burnett Show sketch where Tim Conway has Harvey Korman laughing in the dentist's chair. I don't know if you ever saw that, but they were breaking each up all the time. The stories behind how those sketches went crazy, they used to bet whether Harvey Korman would break up and laugh or not. And Tim Conway would spend half the week trying to come up with an idea that was secretive to the rest of the cast as to how he's going to get Harvey Korman to wet his pants, basically. And Tim said, yes, there was wetness on some of those events. So the stories are there. Yeah.
Steve Jordan, Emergency was filmed at Universal Studios and on location. They might have used the outside of TV City for something.
Oh, I never said Emergency.
No, he's asking. Steve Jordan is a fan who's asking us a question. Yeah. So, Steve, the answer is, I don't believe they ever went inside to shoot Emergency. That was shot at Universal Studios. But maybe the outside of it on that street they could have possibly used.
If you saw CBS logos, potentially it was on that street. But most of it was shot all on the outdoors and all within the 30-mile zone. There's an area of Los Angeles where if you shoot within that 30 miles, TMZ, that's TMZ is the shorthand for a 30-mile zone. So what it means is the show is about Hollywood, because there is a 30-mile zone where if you ask crews and stars to show up, you don't have to put them up overnight. You don't have to pay per diems. You don't have to feed them beyond a certain point. So you try to shoot everything within this zone that's Hollywood-centric. And that's why all the great shows you see on location, like Emergency, especially the lower budget ones, Dragnet and all these shows, they're all within miles of the sound stages. Right. So if you live in North Hollywood or Burbank, you see your neighborhood endlessly on old television shows because they're all right in the neighborhood of where the studios are.
Gee whiz, I drive at
Wow.
110 miles to come to Hollywood to do stuff. I don't even get chicken chow mein out of that. So
You have. I've bought you Chinese dinner.
yes, you have. See, Randy's the only one. Randy buys me chicken chow mein. That's
Anytime. But no Mugu Gai Pan.
No, that's a little too expensive for the budget.
Yeah, Mugu Gai. And I don't like egg foo young because it's not egg, it's not young, it's just foo. Hey, this is the kind of jokes that kept me out of the big time. I want you to know that.
Yes. Mike H66. Yeah, CBS has sold BlackRock in New York. They've sold Television City, and now they're selling, or they've already sold the Radford lot out in Studio City. They don't want to own these things anymore.
They're out of real estate.
They're out of the real estate.
It looks better on the books to rent than it does to buy. So
And
CBS sold Television City, but they're still there. They sold Radford, and they're moving more of CBS people onto the Radford lot. They sold, as you said, BlackRock in New York, and they also are selling what people know as the Broadcast Center in west side of Manhattan. It's an old
on
block.
10th Avenue.
Yeah, it's a block long. It used to be a dairy.
Where Captain Kangaroo and the News used to come from.
And 60 Minutes, and yes, all those great shows. They're selling that as well, or already have. They're out of the real estate business.
So now that we've learned all kinds of amazing things about you this evening, I have another question.
Wow.
Yes.
You like to play Simon Says, I hear.
Wow. There's a fascinating story. Oh, my God. When I grew up, and Jeffrey knows the name, Sonny Fox was a kids show host, and he used to play Simon Says with kids on a television show. Now, my agent calls me one day, and he says, I got a gig for you, $2,500. This is 20 years ago. $2,500 to go to Palm Springs. They'll pay your transportation. $2,500 is the talent fee to go play Simon Says with 1,000 people, because it's a company event, you know, and it's an after meal. They want to wake people up after the lunch, and then they're going to go and have sessions and seminars or whatever. I said, $2,500 for half an hour of work. I mean, yes, but I don't know how to play Simon Says. I mean, I know how to play it, but I don't know how to officiate over it. And my agent says, come into the office. So I go over there, and he says, don't you remember Sonny Fox? Well, how did that go, Fred? So within 10 minutes, I learned how to officiate Simon Says. And I went to Palm Springs at the Marriott, and there were 1,000 people on the golf course, the large grass area. And I'm going, as Simon Says, touch your toes. You put your hand here, and people will touch their toes because it's the other way around. I say Simon Says, touch your toes. You're supposed to touch your toes. But if I put my hands up here, Simon Says, touch your toes. Most people do this. Okay. So there's a lot of misdirection there. And you don't just do it like that. Simon Says, put your hands in your ears. Simon Says, cover your mouth. Simon Says, touch your toes.
Or as Sonny Fox would do, Simon Says, do this. Simon Says, do this. Simon Says, do this. Do this. Out, 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 out. Simon Says, do this. Simon Says, do this. Out, out, out. It was that fast. It's the fastest. And of course, Randy's the perfect person to do it.
So as I've got 1,000 people, I can't call the people out. Sonny Fox did it with 20 kids. So they had employees of the company spread out all along this golf course watching a group of people. Because I'm on a PA, they could all hear me and see me, but I can't tell you who's out. And Simon Says, do this, do this, do this, do this. Bing, 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 bing. Suddenly 100 people disappear at a time. It was crazy. So that was the best $2,500 I ever earned. That was just wonderful.
Yeah, it was just one of those little things that I found in your resume. And I was like, that's actually pretty funny, man. I need to talk about that.
Yeah, no, it's great. If you're open, I mean, it's just, how did you get to do whatever it is, Randy? And the answer is never say no. Do you know how to do? Yes, I know how to do that. And then you go study and learn how to do it. Can you announce a award show? Well, yes, I can announce an award show, whatever it takes. And,
I'm the same way. I've never said, no, I can't do that. I've always said yes, and then figured out how to do it really quickly because You never turn down an
I
opportunity.
mean, Jeff and I are perfect examples of that right there, Randy. We both come from construction backgrounds. We both have some writing knowledge. We're both Golden Poet Award winners. We've been friends for 38 years. And with a writing background, we started writing a novel. And somebody said this would be a great comic book. Well, I don't know how to do comic books. So we found an artist and we produced comic books out of this novel. Then it spun to a live TV series. I don't know how to act. Well, we were building sets, like you said.
Yeah, still don't.
We still don't know how to act, but we did learn. We learned a lot. We learned how to build the sets and do the lighting. And we just released our first animation about a month and a half ago. And the reason I bring that up, folks, is for those of you still watching, tomorrow night at 4:20 on our YouTube channel.
Friday.
Of course.
Friday.
Oh, today's Wednesday. Why? I thought today was Thursday. Sorry, I lied. Friday. Gotta wait 2 days.
Oh, you're a mess.
But
today.
anyway,
Yeah, Friday.
I don't know.
Friday.
Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that story because
So what happens on Friday? Tell me again.
Our animation is going to be released on YouTube.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
At
we were running
4:20.
it. Yeah, at 4:20. We were running it exclusively someplace else. But
Needs more exposure.
yeah, we want to try to give it more exposure. So
That's great. And I like the 420. I get that.
Yes.
Yes. Congratulations. I hope it busts YouTube's server.
I do too.
You know?
But we do it for
But yeah.
fun. Like you said. It's
I know.
not about the money.
I'm glad you said that. No, and it's being from Boston. Don't ever tell me that I can't do something.
Right. I mean, a quick funny story about us. You brought up TMZ. Well, the name of our book is Toking with the Dead. Okay, so it's zombies and weed. Just a quick backstory. Originally, it was The Toking Dead. We got our trademark, but we were opposed by AMC, Robert Kirkman, and The Walking Dead.
Wow.
We fought them for 2.5 years to the point where TMZ actually picked up the story, sent it coast to coast, and it was a David versus Goliath.
Wow.
But here we are 6 seasons later, still doing this part of what we do.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
But back to you, because the show's about you. I stole 5 minutes.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
And as long as we've stopped, Mike H, CBS isn't going to build anything. They're only going to be renting. And Steve Jordan's asking, is that 4:20 Pacific or
Eastern.
Eastern time, Steve?
Eastern. Yep. So 1:20 Pacific. And if you're in between Pacific and Eastern, fill it in.
If you're
Do the math.
if you're in Mar-a-Lago, it's like 11:45 or whatever.
Right.
And
right.
there's no one in the place. Anyway,
Yeah.
And if you're viewing us from Australia, which we do have people from Australia that are watching, it's tomorrow.
Well, I'm going to Australia because I want to see the toilet go the other way. It's
I don't know. I think I'd be afraid.
it's all going backwards. I don't understand. The water's turning the wrong way.
It's true. I have seen that.
So NASCAR in Australia, that I'll be taking right-hand turns.
Wow, I never thought of that. Wow, man. You have to sit on the right side of the car then.
Right?
The wrong side. I went to England. I was so nervous about driving on the quote unquote wrong side of the road that I hugged the wrong side of the road so tightly that I rammed the car up on the curb, blew out 2 tires. And I called the rental place and I said, "What kind of car did you give me? This is terrible." Like it was their fault.
and they answered, pity.
Folks, that's how he became a driving instructor for the DMV.
Well, now the truth comes out. Exactly. Now the truth comes out.
Randy, you've been so involved these last several years with SAG-AFTRA, which is our union for actors in television and films. What are you? I mean, you're there every time there's any kind of a strike. You're there with the picket sign, and you're there. Your presence, like the union has almost every night of the year something going on. Randy is at all of them. Where do you find the energy? And would you want any kind of, I've never asked you this. Would you ever want leadership in the union? Would you ever want to be one of those people who kind of makes things happen?
Only if I thought there was a vacuum. Now, Kate Linder, who's 42 years on Young and Restless, is a good
Our
friend
dear
of
friend,
mine.
yes.
Yes. And she's heading the performers governorship. So there's good people there. I don't need to do it if there are good people there. I'd step up if there weren't, but there's a lot of people with better skills, organization, and leadership than I am. But yes, tonight in about 2.5 hours, I'm going to be at a conference about reality television called You Can't Write That Stuff, or You Can't Write this stuff like that, or something like that. So it's about reality TV, and that's this evening. You talk about strikes. Wednesday next week is a strike at Warner Brothers because it's over 2 years that we don't have a contract for video game voices and images.
Mhm.
You know, they borrow people's faces, you know, through AI, and we're looking for the same protections against AI that we won a year ago for theatrical productions. So yes, we're still carrying signs and walking because we're up against a very serious money-making, bottom line oriented business. Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, Universal, Paramount. I mean, these are deep pocket people, and they're all watching the bottom line very closely, and they play it very tight, and they want to be able to use your likeness, your face, your voice in artificial intelligence. So what this means is you'd be called in. I've done a couple of video games. You'd be called in, you know, whatever it is they need, you provide thousands and thousands of lines and things said because there are so many potential outcomes as you're playing the game. And then goodbye, we'll never see you again because we have everything you've said that can be manipulated in your voice. We have more than enough sample, and we'll never call you again. And people whose faces suddenly end up on a game that maybe they don't want to be part of because it's extra violent or sexual or something. Tough luck. We got your face, we got your voice, go home, and you'll never hear from us again. Well, that's really not
never
fair.
get paid for it again either.
Right.
Exactly. So we're still fighting with the video game people. We won it with the studios for theatrical productions. The network code is another contract. So we're going to have to face the same thing about AI when it comes to variety, game, talk, those shows. That's a different contract. So we won the dramas and the sitcoms, but we haven't won the other. So this is an ongoing problem, and it's bigger than anything really the union faced before, because it means job or no job for the rest of your life, residual or no residual for the rest of your life.
Right.
And I'm a strong union proponent because what I do could be done by other people for less money. And if it was all about the dollars, you wouldn't hear professional voices. You'd hear okay voices because they work cheap. I know that if I go out and do an honest day's work, I'm going to get an honest day's pay. I'm guaranteed a place to change my clothes because otherwise, hey, go change in the men's room, right? You know, I'm guaranteed some certain minimum requirements that you wouldn't, as an individual, be able to bargain for.
Right.
Right. Oh, I want this. Well, screw you. To hell with you. Right. So now there's a certain amount of decorum and respect shown because of the union. I'll give you one more thing. When I joined 44 years ago, they said, it's great. You're going to build a pension. I'm like, what the frick is a pension? What do I care about? I'm 20 years old. What a pension? Well, lo and behold, you work a whole life. And when they're done with you, you don't get a boatload of money, but you get money because a pension. It's a rightful thing. There aren't that many, if you work civil service, teacher, doctor, what can I say? Ambulance worker, fireman, there are pensions, teachers, but in a lot of industries there aren't. And if you gave your whole working life to a job, it's a nice thought that you'd be able to survive when the work dries up.
Right.
Because as Randy knows so well, there are so many performers. I'll keep it just to performers, but directors, writers, craft people, without those pensions, there comes a point. Now, it hasn't happened to Randy or I yet. You age out of the business, or you're old hat, or they're bored with you. No one's ever going to be bored with me or Randy. So it's going to be old age and disease that stops us, because we're going to work. We're going to work 3 years after we're in the grave. We're still going to be producing new stuff.
Hey, I'll do it. I'll be saying to the bodies next to me.
Yeah. Get boned lately.
Come on down.
We're already 6 feet down.
Yeah. Yes. But there are a lot of people, famous people you guys out there love, who are living social security check to social security check, who don't own homes, who don't own cars, who, they're scratching and surviving, and the unions help people not to have to.
And if you find yourself on really hard times, they hand out money. I mean, it comes down to that. We don't want to see anyone suffer, especially if they've given their life to our community.
Right.
Yeah, there's a performers fund for performers, and then there are other funds for it. But again, that's why we need the unions and people like Randy, because most folks, why should I do all that work for nothing? Why should I show up? Why? Because there's a whole community of people. And if everybody had that attitude, we'd be fucked. And Randy is one of those kind people who gets involved and gets shit done to help other people.
Well, this television city thing, this TV city thing was a real passionate play that I made. And I'm glad I was able to do that. The other thing about unions and the Television Academy and all these fraternal organizations, I'm going tonight to learn more about reality TV. There's an education component to the whole thing too, which helps to, keep you informed, sharpen your skills, continue to keep you employable and at the cutting edge of knowledge and of what's going on in the business. So it's not just I work this little area. I know about the industry at large, and I can only get that through an educational program where people are talking, panel members and discussion, and then the socialization that goes on, the informal networking. You learn so much.
And the free booze. And the
free food and booze is, that's goes without saying.
I heard reality TV is just not so real.
Well, it isn't.
I have written and produced reality TV, and I was making good money, and I stopped doing it because I felt dirty putting my name on this stuff. I turned down a fortune, hundreds of thousands of dollars I could have earned. And I just said, no, I can't put Jeffrey Mark on that. It's not a good product. And if it's not a good product, I don't want to be involved.
Well, God bless you for having some scruples, as it were.
Right.
But some of these shows are based on let's embarrass people, let's humiliate people. And the ones that aren't, they whatever the scenario is, the reality, they have a script already in their minds of let's get this person to play against that person, and they're manipulating things. And if you don't get manipulated and you're just playing it straight, you know what? They have the editing, so they can manipulate the pieces that they have of you and recreate a reality. They call it Frankensteining a show. So how to create something that didn't exist.
When we're talking about reality shows, the word that's important is show, not
yes.
Yeah, it's show business. It's the business of a show.
Yeah. Well, unless you're watching our show, because this is live.
This is unreal. This is unreal in a whole different way. Yeah.
You have no idea.
And we haven't even mentioned masturbation yet tonight. So it's all real.
My God. And I thought you could see through let me reframe this camera. I thought you were watching me for a minute there.
Oh, Jesus.
I love this, man. I am not going to top that.
Nope.
Oh, you're not going to top? You're not going to top me, that's for sure.
No, I'm not.
Hey, I'm the one with the top hat, so you guys
there you go.
You're the top man around here. Okay.
But
what does that make me? Yeah.
I don't know, with that shirt.
We are we're a little over time, which is fine. I know we only have you for a certain amount of time. So Jeff, any last questions for our amazing guest?
Well, I will say that I've learned an awful lot of stuff that I did not even know existed. I'm going to have to get your book. I'm definitely going to have to get your book. But I do want to ask you, because you've been involved in the game show industry for decades. What is your favorite game show?
The Price is Right, because it's different every day. There are 70 games. There have been as many as 120 over the 50 years. But at any given time right now, there's 70 plus games. And every day is different because they're shuffled around in a different order and you never really know what's happening. I also love it because it is the most demanding of all the shows to work. The announcer on that show does almost as much talking as the host of the show. Tell them what they're going to bid on. You tell them what they're going to bid on. Then you come up on stage, tell them about these 6 grocery items. And now, and what are they playing for? It's just reams of copy,
Right.
which is,
Okay.
a great challenge. I'll give you a second answer to that too. The other one that I love doing is supermarket sweep.
Because
And
Randy
that's
was the announcer.
It's got its own channel. You can go on Roku and there's a 24-hour-a-day supermarket sweep channel. So you know that one. Betty bounces a bevy of butterball birds into her basket. Now here comes team 2 into the market. They're making the right-hand turn to the meat counter. And those Farmer John hams, they can really beef up a score. But wait, here's team 3. They're going to the back of the market for the giant wedges of cheese. Their limit is 5. And how many can they fit into that? 2, 3, 4. Of course they get 5. But team 1 now, they're looking for, and 3 minutes of that narration is fun to do. It's like doing sports because you don't know what they're going to do. You can't get ahead of them, but you don't want to fall too far behind them. I don't want to be talking about cheese when the other guy's picking up turkeys, so it's really a challenge, and it's so much fun to do that.
And you're
so
doing
those are my
it
two
so
shows.
well. So well.
Okay. I got a second follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
In your opinion, why are game shows so popular?
Simple. I want to be that person. You sit at home. Either you know the answer, like on Jeopardy. If you can come up with an answer before the people on Jeopardy, you consider yourself very smart. The other aspect of it, like a Price is Right show, what would I do there? What would be my answer to what that costs? What would a Q&A show, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I know that answer, and you start yelling at the TV, right? And the ultimate yelling at the TV is Wheel of Fortune. Now listen to how brilliant this is. You get the puzzle, some letters are in there and some letters aren't, okay? If they just had the players worried about solving the puzzle as you're trying to solve the puzzle, they would solve it quicker because these are very smart people. So what did Merv Griffin create all these years ago? It's 50 years ago. He created an extra thing that the contestants have to do that you at home don't have to, and that's spin the wheel and call a letter. So while they're doing all this wheel spinning, which is a waste of time, you get to look at the puzzle. So you have nothing else to think about except the puzzle. And as a result, you will end up with the puzzle often faster than the player will because he's distracted. And when you yell the answer, that's like masturbation, okay? Because you know it before they do, and that's a moment for you. You feel smart. You feel great about yourself. So that's the secret behind Wheel. Give them something else to do so you can solve it faster. Jeopardy, can I answer before they do? You don't have the same success rate. Prize shows, my God, which would I pick, door number 1 or door number 2? Oh, I knew that price was too low. Or I'm in that supermarket. I would have joined. I would have grabbed the dog food. That stuff's more important. Why the hell are they grabbing the chicken? In the chicken dinner from the frozen food? That's bullshit. I would have. So you sit there and you second guess the people. You imagine yourself in their position, and you consider yourself a winner if you play it smarter than they do. Or sometimes you just love the contestant. That's why we ask, what do you do for a living? Where do you live? Are you married? Do you have kids? We want to know about these people a little bit so the folks at home can relate to them. Yep. Oh, you were in the Army. Oh, God, I was in the Army. Or my brother's in the Army. I want the guy from the Army to win. Right? So that's the appeal. Many answers to one question.
Nice.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. And usually I never ask a last question, but in this instance, I'm going to ask one that I'm going to let Mr. Jeffrey Mark ask his last question.
It's an innie, and I'm circumcised.
Okay.
One of those had to be the question, right?
Actually, no. I mean, because you brought up The Price is Right as your favorite, game show. What was your favorite prize? Oh, not prize, but puzzle on that show?
On The Price is Right?
Yeah. Like out of all the, like Plinko and this, they had so many of them. Did you have a favorite that you like to announce?
Well, Plinko gets the biggest audience reaction. Ben, you have a chance to win up to $50,000 playing Plinko. Audience goes nuts. So there's that kind of enthusiasm that the audience has for Plinko. But for me, the showcases were the most fun because, you'll here's a living room set, and you'll put that living room set on your new 60 yards of Hibernia Mills carpet. Yes, 100% wool carpet. And when you step off that carpet, you may step in a new car. So I like the way those the story. It's kind of like a story gets told.
Yeah,
One thing leads to the other, and those were fun because you could have but wait, you'll also get there's a drama and a song almost to the way that you do those. So those are fun in that.
Excellent. Yeah. Mr. Jeffrey Mark, do you have any last questions for our amazing guest this evening?
I've known Randy. We really are. We've known each other for years. We're very close friends.
Yes.
Could you? I know your time is very limited because you have to go.
I have to go to this thing. Yeah.
Yes. Can you pick one or the other? For those of you who don't know, Randy was not only working in show business, in-game shows. Randy was once one of the contestants on To Tell the Truth, one of the imposters, and was once on What's My Line. Either talk about Mrs. Hart or talk about Arlene Francis, one or the other, please.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so Kitty Carlisle Hart is the older woman who was on 6 decades of To Tell the Truth. In other words, that's the one where you have 3 people and you have to figure out which is real and who the 2 imposters are. So she'd been on that show in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. Quite a record. And she played that show for blood. She wanted to be able to pick the right person and not get fooled. So I'm sitting there as an imposter and I want to draw her vote because I win more money if I draw her vote. So I'm coming up with answers, talking out of my ass, and just, well, that's the way those things are, Don't you sit there like you don't know what's going on, right? So at the end of the discussion and the Q&A, the host always says, all right, it's time now to mark your ballots. Is it number 1, number 2, or number 3? So I'm number 2. I'm an imposter. But as they're saying that, Kitty knows that she's got 10 seconds where she's not on camera because they're looking at these 3 people. She picks up a freaking pair of binoculars. She would call them opera glasses, but they're binoculars. And all I see is her staring at me, because people who lie tend to look away. So I just stared back at her and smiled. I drew her vote. And at the end of the show, she came up to me, they roll the credits and then I cut, that's a wrap. She comes over to me. She says, I was sure it was you. You stared right back at me. I said, hey, I'm here to fool you. She says, well, you did. So that was like a great moment. I got to fool the grand dame of To Tell the Truth.
Yeah, I knew Mrs. Hart socially. She would, believe it or not, was a fan of my work.
Wow.
But I never got to work with her like that. Yeah. That's just, To Tell the Truth was my favorite game show growing up. And
you're so lucky to have known her. She goes all the way back to Broadway and opera, and she with the 3 Marx Brothers. She was involved with everything that happened in New York society and theater.
That's my question. That's my question, boys.
Excellent.
Right.
So, folks, on that, I am going to wrap the show up. Randy?
Yes.
Where do you like interacting with your fans and friends on the social medias?
Well, I love you to go to the website, which is tvrandywest.com. Learn all sorts of fun stuff and see the books and see a lot of narrative. I also write a tribute to Johnny Olson. There's a tribute to Charlie O'Donnell, who was the announcer on Wheel of Fortune. So people who have been significant in my life, Jay Stewart, I write about them on the website. And for Facebook, TV Randy West. So Facebook.com/TV Randy West, just like the website tvrandywest.com. So read about me there and we'll see you online. And thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Mr. Jeffrey Mark.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jeffrey Mark, the one and only.
The one and only. Well, I'm on this
My
show
brother from another.
Yay. And I'm so pleased. You can catch me here every week. I have Jeffrey Mark Plays Ella as a podcast and a radio show every week. I'm going to be on Friday. For those of you who are in the Seattle area, I'll be on Manson Mitchell talking about the history of the Oscars for an hour at 10 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. And new books coming out. And I've got important things to announce, but they're not quite ready yet. But there's really cool stuff coming up with me, and I love being here with you.
We love having you. Hef.
Hef.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's you.
is that an H? Yeah. Go to stilltoken.com. Everything's there. Stilltoken.com. And don't forget, Friday, 4:20 Eastern Time, the animation will hit YouTube. So you can go watch that. And if you're in our area out here on the East Coast, up in the New England area, next weekend, not this coming one,
March
next weekend,
7th, 8th,
March
and
7th,
9th.
8th, and 9th, we will be in Boxborough at the Northeast Comic Con, hanging out, doing our thing, and kind of messing with people because that's what we like to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, like Jeff said, stilltoken.com is where you can find out everything you need to know about us, from the novels to the comic books to the animation to the TV series to this amazing show. All our shows are archived there, so feel free to go back and watch them. We want to thank Randy for taking time out of his busy schedule to come hang out and reminisce about just a shit ton of amazing things. That's all I can say. I mean, I can't pick a favorite part of the show. Yeah, I can. It was the Simon Says thing. But in all seriousness, folks, to all our veterans and first responders, we want to thank you for doing what you do so people like us can come up here and do what we do. Stay safe. We'll see you next week. We are out of here.
Hey.